welcome to the Best of 2010 Requiem Metal Podcast Part 1. We just heard Kylesa, Tired Climb, and Cheating Synergy from the Spiral Shadow record. A little bit of Philip Cope and Laura Pleasance rocking the house.
Laura Pleasance makes me pleasant. I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.
And welcome to yet another year. I think this is our third countdown, but I think our fourth year that we've been.
Well, we're approaching our fourth year.
Approaching our fourth complete year, but we're in the midst of we're above 3 years.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And
it's almost longer than we've done any of the zines.
I know. And more consistent than any of the zines we've ever done.
That's for sure.
But 2010, it was a pretty eclectic year actually. When you put these lists together, it seems as if last year there was at least something kind of thematic in terms of like the presence of, I guess, hardcore ISIS-y kind of bass bands like the Baroness, the Converge, the Coalesce. There was some of that kind of going on. This year it's all over the place. I mean, there's kind of oddball black metal things mixed in with, punk rock influence things and very like sludgy things.
At first I thought it was a really lackluster year actually.
And then you start to put it together and
it's just, there's nothing obvious. I don't think this year. I mean, what would you think? What's the most obvious record that's fantastic?
The most obvious things I think that everyone thought would be there
outside
at
of
the
Enslaved
end is probably Enslaved and Watain. Those are probably like the things that when we were brainstorming on, oh my God, what's Decibel's top 5 or top 10 going to be, that kind of thing. Yeah, I had a sneaking suspicion about the Agalach based on the score they gave it and based on a couple of other things, but it was a crazy year. It was kind of the dominance of some of the oddball labels, I guess. The Profound Lores, the Southern Season of Mist. Even Southern Lord had a couple pretty monumental. Rise Above had some kind of great releases. I mean, it was an unexpected year where the major labels had a few things. I guess by major I mean the major underground metal labels, the Century Media's and Nuclear Blast.
Well, and even some of the other like Maverick and I forget what is Maiden on.
Oh boy, good question. Probably BMG, maybe.
Universal, Sony Universal. So just a quick reminder for like last year we had Kylesa again for the Static Tensions record, Unanimated, Hypocrisy. Asphyx had their comeback record. You said Baroness, Keelhaul, Magruder Grind, Sark, Mastodon, Marduk, Funeral Mist,
Unanimated is probably in there somewhere.
Yeah, Unanimated.
Paradise Lost probably. I
think. Coalesce, Catatonia. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was just like duh.
Yeah, kind of some obvious things.
Yeah, and this year was just this is probably the longest it's taken me to actually have a coherent list.
Yeah. Well, and I think too what's weird is you had some big dogs that came out last year, and this year some of the big dogs swung and didn't hit them out of the park. I think of like a record like Dark Tranquility, We Are the Void, which is a decent record, but it didn't really advance the sound much at all. It didn't really do a lot for me. I felt like Knockmistium's Black Metal Part 2 Addicts was almost there, but it wasn't. It's kind of like an in-between record.
It sounded like realized. It was like a really good. It could have been a really good EP.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, and it had a sameness to it, and it was a good record. I'm not knocking it. It's just not something I put on as much as say Black Metal 1. Even the second Hooded Menace didn't hit as immediately as the first one. It's good, but it's subtle. Not as
That's almost kind of the watchword for this year is subtlety.
It's subtle, a lot of subtleties. Yeah, Never Cross the Dead. That was a pretty cool record. There were some records that were put out early in the year, like Unleash's As Yggdrasil Trembles, which came out around the same time as the Cathedral, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, and that was those early are both great records. Yeah. I didn't stick with the Unleash as much as say the Cathedral. I didn't keep pulling it out, throughout the year, But it's nice to know that Unleashed is at least back to some kind of consistent level,
Well, they're back at what they do best and not experimenting.
Sure. And then you had alongside, kind of in the Swedish vein, you had The Crown put out a pretty decent record.
Reformed. It got, I think, a little bit more praise than I think it deserves, but it's a solid record. It's not Death Race King or Crowned in Terror, but it's a solid. Yeah. It's way better than anything Soilwork's done the last 10 years.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm not saying much, but yeah, exactly. And, a few other things that just just miss making our list. The High on Fire, Snakes of the Divine could have been there. I mean, it was very close.
I think it's a great record, but it's not a record that, and I listened to it a lot when it came out, but it's pushing almost a year old now. I mean, it came out really early in the year, and I'd had a promo before that, and it's just not, it wasn't sticking with me like a lot of this other stuff that, we're going to be highlighting.
Sure. The Melankesh record, which just came out, probably came out a little too late for it to make a big impact with us, because Melankesh is a band that I don't immediately listen to, even though I have the Epigenesis. It's something that I need to kind of take some time with, and I just haven't done it. And maybe it'll be a great record that in hindsight in 2010, but
we'll do a hindsight show. Yeah. But I mean, one thing right off the bat, for Melankesh at least, the production's fantastic.
Sure, it's very organic and analog, and a lot of cool. They used a lot of the traditional Middle Eastern and Turkish instruments and things like that. And we had met with the Melankesh guys last summer at the Maryland Death Fest, and they talked to us quite a bit about
Ashmedi. I think we just met with Ashmedi.
Pretty much him, yeah. And and just talked about the production of that record. You had a couple of, I guess, more offbeat records, which are the, I guess, lesser versions of albums that we will be featuring, like the Agalok, like the Dawnbringer, things like that. But you had, the Ludicra, the Tenant record on Profound Lore, which is a great record, and I listened to it quite a bit for a little while, but in hindsight, I just didn't pull it out much the last four months or so. Yeah. And then the Alcest record, which Ekeles de Lune, possibly Ekeles de Lune. I don't know.
Ekeles de Balibi. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend that I can.
And we will be talking about some more French bands later, but the Alcest was great. It just was a background kind of record that I would put on and not really absorb as much. But
it didn't have that kind of initial excitement, I think, as that first record, where it kind of blew everybody away.
Sure. And it's and again, it might be a grower, it might be something I turn to and one day it just clicks for me, and I liked it. These are records. The reason we're talking about these is not because we think these are crappy records. These are records that just barely missed.
We could have done a top 40.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have the time, and you guys probably don't have the patience.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot to expect. And then a record that probably was my number 11. Mark and I each kind of assembled 10 records each, even though a lot of them,
there's tons of crossover.
Pretty much the whole thing is crossover. But really wanted to put that Atheist record, Jupiter, on there, and I like it. I think it's fantastic. It's a great comeback.
A really good record. It's raw.
It's just it's like last year, the Obscura record just missing the the boat. It doesn't mean it's not a great record by any means. I know for me, and I know Decibel kind of agreed, the new Fear Factor was actually, or Fear Factory, not Fear Factor, we eat bugs and shit. But the new Fear Factory Mechanized was probably the best thing they've done in 15 years, which is not saying much because the things they've done the last 15 years are pretty shitty, but it harkened back to sort of the glory years, I guess.
Dino finally got off the burrito truck and played some guitar again.
I don't know if he's off the burrito truck, but he's at least,
he got up momentarily.
Yeah, exactly. And then a record I got recently, and it was featured pretty highly in the Decibel Top 10, is the Thou Summit, and unfortunately it's sort of like funeral drone sludge doom, which means I've got to be in the mood to really absorb this record, and I just haven't done it yet. But really nice layout, comes with a nice patch and stuff. Too.
It's beautiful. The thing is, the whole trepidation about all these lists is that there's really, outside of, I think there's a couple different reasons why people do them. One is for street cred, to be more underground than Thou.
Yep. More underground than Thou Summit.
That was an unintentional pun there. It's either that or just kind of showing all this extra knowledge you have. But what I tried to do when assembling mine was stuff that I really listened to and really, really enjoyed, even if it's not stuff that if some of it's more mainstream or obvious, but the underground stuff that I pulled out, or the really deep underground stuff, is stuff that I honestly really, really enjoy. And I think that's kind of
that's the same approach.
And we've got we're two guys doing it instead of when a magazine comes up, it's all the editors and all the writers and stuff like that. Yeah. So I just want to kind of throw that out there.
And Mark and I,
coming from,
because of living together and because of doing the show, we tend to have more of a kind of a Star Trek mind meld kind of thing, because we're kind of recommending the same records to each other all the time. Like, hey, have you heard this? It's like when we get to the ghosts, talking about that story, you're down in the basement, you hear this really weird thing I'm listening to, and you're like, what the hell was that? And then next thing you know, Mark's got it down in the basement, listened to it 8 times in a row, and then he's telling me about it, and it kind of blends that way, and it's kind of neat. A couple other things, the Abigail Williams was a pretty decent record.
If you miss Old Emperor, boy, that's a pretty good substitute.
I was a big fan of the Charred Walls of the Damned. I mean, I feel like they finally kind of found a really good use for Ripper's vocals.
I've heard like 3 or 4 tracks, and I'm pretty impressed. It's what I wish
record,
Demons and Wizards would be.
Yeah, exactly. It's what the second Demons and Wizards really should have been. So that shitty record, and then the Castavet record was pretty fantastic, kind of shimmering black metal stuff. Burzum, I mean, needs to be acknowledged. Had some good moments to it.
Well, it's Philosophy Part 2.
Yeah,
basically, it was nice to see that people can actually go back to what they were kind of known for originally, or at least the aesthetic, and go back to. And I think Bellis is a solid record. It's not on my list, but I did listen to it a lot.
Yeah, I mowed some lawns to it for sure. Yeah. I often mow lawns to Burzum. I don't know why. So, that and Alice in Chains records, but. The Nails record, we have been wanting to hear that for a while.
We
literally got it in the mail today, and it's great.
It's good.
It fits in with the Black Breath and some of the other
and Trap Them and that kind of whole the entombed worship kind of stuff.
Yeah, and a couple of non-metal records. I'll give a kind of shout out. I don't know if you would consider the Sailors with Wax Wings to be a non-metal. It's very subtle. Has guys from Current 93, Slow Dive, Swans and stuff. And it's a guy from Pyramids, and I've been listening to that a lot and starting to absorb it. Maybe given like another month or so, it might have shown up on my list, but not at this point. And then I really dug the Black Keys record, Brothers.
I've heard a lot of stuff about it, but
it's a nice record.
Since I haven't worked at a record store, I have no idea of what half the stuff that's out there. I just don't have the mental faculties to do it. I know the new Shipping News is actually really good. I've heard that, but I don't own it.
The new Arcade Fire was decent too, and then the Man's Gin and the new Dax Riggs, both of those records kind of share a kind of commonality in terms of the fact that they're both vocalists for extreme metal bands, Acid Bath and Cobalt. But I really have been getting into that Man's Gin a lot the last couple of weeks. It kind of sounds like a Alice in Chains Sap, but with like some more cobaltisms or something.
Yeah, it's really honest though. I think that's the big thing. Is because it's really easy to do something like that and have it come across as being pandering.
Sure,
but it comes across really genuine.
And then the Autopsy. That was a great release.
EP.
The EP and
full length coming.
Yeah, and the Torch songs for singles, which I kind of get mad at Decibel for ranking that so high because I feel like it was kind of an EP, but I don't know.
It's totally an EP.
I mean, Torch is great. I'm a huge Torch fan, but. I don't know. Anyways, I know the Decibel has a boner for those guys, so and that happens. We've got boners for like Paradise Lost and Catatonia, so it happens. But anyways, what did make the list this year? Now let's turn to that.
Kylesa, obviously.
Let's talk about
a record that I think, well, at least in your case, you didn't really even. I guess penetrate it until
month or so.
Yeah,
I had it in the summertime or whenever it came out, late summer, early fall.
Yeah, I had an early promo that was it was some labels like to stream things, and being crafty on the internet, I recorded it as one big track and listened to it quite a bit. And I didn't really digest it as songs, but as an entire album. And people, I think, were a little bummed out after Static Tensions was an unbelievable record. They thought this was the follow up was going to be, I don't know what they expected, but this is kind of what I wanted from it. There's a lot more indie rock influence. There's lots of Pixies-ish.
Very Pixie stuff, and you heard that in the last song, Cheating Synergy, there that we open up with some kind of very like dynamic indie. Kind of riffing and I don't want to call it souling, but just the riffing that was sort of used,
leads and stuff.
But then you had like the punch in the face kind of stuff, like the opener, Tired Climb, which is so primitive, simple. I mean, it's just
the whole record is
it's like almost a hip hop beat,
Yeah,
da 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 da. I mean, it's just
and I don't know if I think some people are pissed off about the use of two drummers when it doesn't necessarily seem like it adds
a layer to it though.
It does, but it's not as obvious as it was on Static Tensions, where you had like almost like blast beats along with somebody else doing a more standard rock.
I feel like they're doing more like tribal kind of stuff where everybody is playing the same rhythm, but there's like a added layer because
I think it's the whole thing is so stripped down and unified that it's not, you can't necessarily pick out, okay, this is guitar A and this is guitar B and whatever, you know. This is the drummer 1 and 2. But
if you haven't gotten into this Kylesa yet, because you had heard kind of mixed things about it. It grows on you quite a bit, and I really feel like they're utilizing their extremes well. Their extreme dynamic, like their extreme indie side, and then when they need to bludgeon, they can bludgeon too. But overall, it's got like almost a warmth to it. That's well, and I think
cool. If you have the chance to see them live, we've missed them a couple times. It seems like now. But everybody that I've talked to that's seen them on this last tour with where they're supporting High and Fire
and Torch,
and Torch, unbelievable. I think live is really their forte and where they shine the most, like a lot of bands. But
I'm Facebook friends. We are with Flora, so we sometimes communicate with her a little bit, but. So and then kind of, I guess, in the sludgy, doomy realm is kind of where we're going next. And we're going to talk about Cathedral, which the guessing game came out early in the year. We mentioned it. I remember kind of getting this around the same time as Unleashed, early like January or something like that. And it's a double record. Nuclear Blast put it out. I guess it's a double record.
4 LPs.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot to absorb. It's a lot to absorb. It's fantastic. It's my favorite thing they've done since like End Time, probably.
Well, this record, I mean, it's the first Garden of Unearthly Delights they put out in 2005. So it's been like a 5-year gap, basically. And I think Cathedral for the last 10 years or so have been kind of battling with themselves, like, okay, are we going to go back to more like Force of Equilibrium stuff like it was hinted in End Time? Or are we going to do whatever we want to do? And this seems like a record they did for themselves because like the second track... actually, no, it's
it's the second track because there's like a little like intro kind of piece.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it goes Immaculate Misconception and then Funeral of Dreams, which has a bunch of really weird, just eclectic, bizarre vocal stuff. Yeah, really reminiscent of the Voyage of the Homo Sapien off of the EP, Cosmic Requiem EP. It's been named like 6 different things, I think. Yeah. But that was where they completely like kind of went off the deep end with their influences and just let everything go.
Babies crying and all kinds of stuff. It's really cool.
And this record is just it just seems like 4 guys really having a good time. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly what I want out of a Cathedral record because I've liked them on all of their weird tangents they've ever won, except for Supernatural Birth Machine.
Was pretty lackluster.
It's boring, but it's still...
Has some good songs on it.
There's some good songs on it.
Yeah. I got into it.
Fireball Demon, dude.
Yes, exactly. But the song we're going to hear next, Painting in the Dark, infectious bass lines. It's got some great Gaz leads on it. I mean, it's just
as soon as the bass line starts out, you just want to start shaking your ass or something.
There's a couple ass shakers you'll be hearing in all this. And just so you're aware, and you probably already know this because I'm sure that episode 2 and episode 3 are downloading currently as you're listening to this. But we're planning on extending this out so we can play the songs we want to play instead of only playing the short songs and different things. So you'll be
given a lot of context behind it too.
Yeah. So you're in for the long haul with us for a little while, but
this could possibly be your entire drive to and from Grandma's house.
Yes, it could be. Although this will probably be New Year's Eve party by the time this plays. So
when you're being the designated driver,
exactly. Yeah,
throw this on.
Exactly. I'm sure all the drunk people in your car will appreciate Cathedral Painting in the Dark. So, but the theme of this next set of music, which we'll kind of come back and talk about the other 2 bands, are British bands that have been around for a while who are underappreciated and still kind of
still flying the flag.
Still flying the flag. So enjoy Cathedral and then Anathema and Iron Maiden, and we'll come back and talk about those tunes in a bit.
Well, if this is reality, you can stick it. I'm off to do some painting in the dark.
Politicians laugh and die. Public stare of murdered eyes. Living statues, souls have died. Concrete cancer setting in. Another war about to begin. In freedom's place in my mind. After midnight senses climb, building castles in the sky, gateways to another life. Stallions of destiny, take me to celestial seas. Aphrodite waits for me, we swim into eternity. Epic places only I can see. Painting pictures in the dark of a place. Let's start.
That was The Alchemist from Iron Maiden's Final Frontier. Then we heard A Simple Mistake from Anathema's We're Here Because We're Here. And then, of course, we started with Cathedral Painting in the Dark from the Guessing Game. So.
Now, Jason, Anathema's not metal. Why are they on the list?
Oh, boy. Well, you know, there are some heavy moments. They're an emotionally heavy band, much like Cathedral, or not
My
Cathedral, My Dying Bride, or Paradise Lost, or
Triptykon.
Catatonia. Or yeah, although Triptykon's definitely in the metal realm. I mean, obviously everyone knows, well, not everyone, but most listeners of the podcast know that Anathema, you know, his roots lie in the British doom metal scene.
Well, and the weird thing is that they've been, as much as they've tried, I mean, for the last almost 10 years, they've tried to kind of shed that whole doom origin. Mm-hmm. They're still pigeonholed and marketed and reviewed and interviewed by metal publications.
Yeah.
So it's like either embrace it or don't.
Yeah, exactly. And they've never seemed angry about that. They've just seemed maybe frustrated that they can't, break out and be able to kind of set something in motion for themselves. Much like, I guess, Chuck said he was always kind of bothered by the fact they named his band Death. Yeah. But at the same time, he embraced metal and he embraced what it was. And, and he knew that he could kind of transcend that.
Well, I think Anathema is everybody kind of knows at this point they're kind of their own worst enemies. They've got this kind of entitled attitude that, okay, we've put in the hours and the effort. Why are we not recognized for this stuff?
Yeah.
And that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not about hard work and perseverance.
No. And this is the first full length they put out in about 5 or 6 years. And it kind of picks up right where their last studio record, A Natural Disaster, kind of picked up or left off. Some of the demos, especially for the song you just heard, A Simple Mistake, those were sitting around for a couple of years. We had access to those. I can't remember what they were called. They had kind of a title to them. But the record as a whole, We're Here Because We're Here, it's brighter. It's kind of subtle. It requires kind of some subtle, some kind of more simplistic listening.
It's not a car record.
No, you tried in the car a couple times. Yeah. It's definitely a headphone record, and it's got some warmth to it that I really like, and in much in the same way that there were some of those tunes on Natural Disaster, or even on A Fine Day to Exit, that seemed to be kind of meandering or something, or just kind of I don't want to say psychedelic, but we'll say dreamy, because obviously they draw a lot of influence from Pink Floyd and some of that kind of scene. Again, if you're in the car or something like that, you're missing a lot of the subtleties to it. And it took me a few listens to kind of get into it, outside of, like, say, A Simple Mistake and a couple other songs that were pretty immediate. Yeah. Simple Mistake is pretty straightforward, but also epic in terms of the build that kind of goes with it. What can I say? You as much as you love Cathedral, I probably love Anathema. I mean, they're right up there for me, and I know you like Anathema as well.
Oh, yeah.
As I like Cathedral, but they're kind of one of those bands that, I'll kind of go with them to the end of time. Much like you with probably Paradise Lost. Where like they might go into controversial territory from time to time.
I've followed Paradise Lost into some pretty awesome raves and still made it out alive.
Yeah. And speaking of subtle, Iron Maiden.
Totally. I mean, that's. A lot of people probably think, okay, enough of Iron Maiden, or I think there's that crowd that wants them to do another Number of the Beast, which, okay, if you did something 20 years ago, do you want to necessarily go back and do the same thing again?
And let's not even say 20, let's say 30.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, Number of the Beast is old,
yeah, it is.
It's almost 30 years old now.
Yeah. But these guys, the average age of the guys in Iron Maiden is like 55 or something. And they've basically not really, they've been consistently putting out records forever now. Mm-hmm. And since Dickinson came back, the kind of the post-2000 era, or was it 2000 that came out?
2000, Brave New World. Yeah. Brave New World. Or 2001. Yeah, it's one of those.
It was Brave New World. There was A Matter of Life and Death, Dance of Death, and then
Final
Frontier. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people were thinking, where the hell are they going to go?
Yeah.
And I think I know we just recently kind of had a big Maiden kick before the new record came out. Mm-hmm. Went back and listened to A Matter of Life and Death, which I think is an unbelievable record.
And I really got into Dance of Death.
Yeah.
Or Dance of the Dead. Wait.
Dance of Death.
Dance of Death. Okay, yeah. I was right. Dance of Dead's a COC song.
Yeah. But just the records, they're not immediate.
Yeah.
And
they took a while.
It's I think it's a lot of it's like Steve Harris kind of. It's going back to his fascination with prog music. Yeah. But now with that infused energy with Adrian Smith back doing a lot of the songwriting. Actually, on Final Frontier, he did the Satellite 15 Final Frontier song, which is it's a really weird intro, this weird kind of like drum interlude thing, with like space noises and shit. Yeah. But it really works well, and it kind of sets the tone for the record that this is not what you typically think of Iron Maiden. With what was their El Dorado was was a single, which is probably the easiest one to penetrate. But
Alchemist, I think, is a good tune though.
The Alchemist is a really good tune, but it's just the whole record. I've probably listened to it like probably 20 plus times, and every time I listen to it, I pick up something else, or there's something else that kind of grabs my attention. Like, oh, I want to hear that again. And it's just, it's an unbelievable. I think it's one of the best things they've probably done since
the late 80s.
I don't know. It's hard to make a blanket statement like that, but it's. I think it stands
certainly
really.
The 90s, you don't really. I mean, you just almost exclude a lot of the 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some good Blaze songs, but not albums as a whole.
No. Yeah, and they. I don't think their albums necessarily worked as complete pieces like the last couple have.
Yeah.
And just these are guys that are like completely in their prime and still have energy and fire, and it's.
Well, and I think the thing about these three records that we just kind of focus on, not to mention the fact they all hail from England and they all have been around for 20 plus years or so, is that these are all three records that these people wrote for themselves. Clearly, these were not like commercially minded records at all, and you have to commend bands who are willing to do that. They're not following the trends,
especially a band that at Maiden's kind of like level right now that they can still do that. And I just saw them for this tour. And they had, I don't remember what the capacity of the place was, but it was a huge outdoor arena. Place was absolutely packed. Demographics going from, dudes in their 50s and 60s, but it was like an entire family affair.
Yeah.
At the end of the show, there's like a 2-year-old kid with these big like mufflers over their ears and on the dad's shoulders, and Nico McBrain came out and handed the kid the sticks, and
that's awesome.
It was just it's an interesting time to where these bands have been around Maiden's been around for 30 plus years or so now.
And Maiden could definitely have rested on their laurels, and they
absolutely
they haven't. You know, they've constantly upped the ante and challenged themselves.
Or they
as
could
songwriters.
They could have gone the road of like the Scorpions or something too, and become kind of like weird commercial.
Yeah, or like a parody of their old self or something like that. Like Aerosmith or whatever. Some of these other bands that probably should have died a death.
But outside of, I think the only like misstep they did was the cover.
Yeah,
I hate the new Eddie, which that's just a taste thing. But the cool thing about it, you look at this and you're like, is this record from 2010 or is this from like 1988? You can't tell.
Yeah, which
kind of like. Maiden, they're kind of timeless.
Yeah. But even compared, I liked the last few covers a lot. And this one just.
This is kind of a return to, Eddie being on the cover up in the forefront. Like Brave New World, he was like this ominous cloud. And then Matter of Life and Death.
He was like on the tank or something.
Yeah, he was just like a soldier. And Dance of Death, he's kind of like a Grim Reaper character.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And speaking of comebacks and people who, just don't seem to know when life has them down and they decide to keep coming back. Tom G. Warrior is the Warrior.
Yeah, he's had some hiccups along the way, like Apollyon Sun. Anyone?
Yeah.
This I think
Cold Lake.
Yeah, Cold
Cherry
Lake.
Orchard.
Actually, there's some stuff on those last couple Frost records that aren't bad.
Well, no, I'm not talking the one previous, the Parched with Thirst, or no, not Parched with Thirst. What's
Parched with Thirst? I'm Dying's. That's just a compilation.
What's the record after Into the Pandemonium? That's actually really good that I picked up used. Or no, it is Cold Lake, but then there's one after that that's actually decent. And I can't even think of it right now. Yeah,
the vocals are terrible on it, but there's some awesome riffs on that record. But I think Monotheist, the Celtic Frost kind of comeback record, I think really kicked people in the nuts and like, holy shit, Tom G. Warrior still got it.
He still got it, yeah.
And then there's all the, I guess, political issues between him and Martin Ain, and the band kind of split. And I really had no expectation for what Triptykon was going to be.
No, and no one knew how oppressive and the various uses of like vocals that you hear on this Triptykon record.
Oh yeah,
and Eparistera, Daimones.
We've got a lot of Latin that's going to be on this episode. Wait till we get to
Eparistera, Daimones. Yeah, Triptykon. But you've got the H.R. Geiger cover again to kind of keep with some consistent stuff. And just a lot of the songs that he wrote for this record were intended to be on the Celtic Frost follow-up to Monotheist. And we saw these guys live, and they were just absolutely oppressive, but in a cool way.
Yeah.
We were kind of bobbing our heads and stuff, but man,
some of the people were with
the strength hated it. Yeah.
But that's one thing that he's a really like upbeat, nice guy, passionate guy, but yet he can still pull this. I mean, I think that's where he channels it all.
Yeah, I mean, he really kind of cuts his veins open and kind of pours out his emotions into these songs.
And he's being backed by a band that are all probably people half his age, which is pretty cool.
And the album opener, Goetia, and then the Prolonging, the album closer, are both over the 10, 12 minute length. I mean, the Prolonging is like 17 minutes of just like utter depression and stuff.
And this has gotten like critically really good response.
Yeah.
And even the Shattered EP that just came out not too long ago,
where they do some Celtic Frost covers, which we saw live. Them doing
they have a video up for the song Shattered, and he seems to have just as much vigor and enthusiasm.
He had a lot of energy live. I mean,
and it was the turnout was terrible at the show.
Yeah.
There's probably 25 people there.
Yeah,
and he still gave it his all.
Heck yeah.
It was. Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's not like a record I throw on while I'm like, want to get in the shower and have a fast,
sure.
Yeah, shampoo my hair.
It's very avant metal, just like a lot of the Celtic Frost stuff has been of late. But every song almost seemed to have its own like vocal approach. I mean, some of the stuff he's doing is like proto death metal stuff.
Oh, there's total death metal vocals on this thing, yeah.
And it's a cool. And the song we picked out, Myopic Empire, is a nice little taste because you get kind of the Celtic Frostisms, you get some of the various vocal styles, and you get some of the avant stuff with the use of piano and female vocals and some different things kind of going on there. So, but
going back to like Into the Pandemonium, I mean, it kind of like bridges all of everything he's done and really modernizes it without it sounding like he's trying too hard.
Yeah, and I feel like now that he's kind of made this sort of follow up to Frost, to Monotheist, like I think now he probably has a little bit of freedom to maybe pursue some of the more extreme angles a little bit more. Maybe write a heavier, not necessarily heavier, but like more death metal focused record.
There's even some passages in this where there's some pretty. I mean, there's heavy guitars through the whole thing, but like the double bass, like not blasts or anything, but still the speed is there a little bit more than say Monotheist, which was just kind of like dirge.
Just a funeral is what this kind of sounded like, So, but so let's get into some Triptykon, and we've got Triptykon Myopic Empire from the aforementioned record, and then we've got Inquisition, and we'll talk a little bit more about Inquisition when we come back. That might be a one you haven't heard before, so.
The inner sanctum dies, rhapsodized before your sightless eyes. Demise, torturous in disguise. Your words, all but stigmatized. Like a body victim, soul, sacrifice of faith. The desire to live flesh, enforced to applicate. Pain, pain. Myopic Empire. Pain, pain. Myopic Empire. Shelter. To a without mind, subsistence within your own decline.
Lucifer. Punish your enemies, O Lord of the Night. Destroy them all.
We just heard Inquisition, Command of the Dark Crown. I'll tell you that's the album title as soon as we get into it a little bit. Yeah. And we heard Triptykon, Myopic Empire off of the record we talked about earlier.
Eparistera, Daimones.
It's the only one out there except for the Shattered EP.
Daimones. I feel pretty confident with that, but okay. I don't know. I lived in Italy for a while, so maybe some Latin rubbed off.
My Latin is...
My Norwegian and all that crap, that's bad.
My Norwegian's actually getting better because I hung out with
we had a Norwegian guest.
Over,
Kim, that was over. So, but the Inquisition tune...
Ominous Doctrines. Thorns. Yeah, Ominous Doctrines of the Perpetual Mystical Macrocosm. These guys...
Wait, say that again.
Ominous Doctrines of the Perpetual Mystical Macrocosm.
That's the name of the record.
That's the name of the record, and it's way too long to probably fit on the spine of a CD. But yeah, these guys, they're originally from Colombia, formed in 1988, and they're kind of a thrash metal act. And then 94, the whole second wave of black metal came around, and they kind of turned into this raw black metal type band. And This is the first record I've heard from
And
them.
now they're relocated in the Pacific Northwest, correct?
Yeah, in 96, Dagon, based off of a Lovecraft name, moved to I think he moved to California and then to the Pacific Northwest and hung out with hooked up with this drummer guy and kind of, I think, created this little bit different sound than just straight up black metal. And I think the one thing that people probably notice is like, wow, is this like an Immortal side project?
Yeah, the Abath vocals.
Total Abath vocals. That and the funny thing is, I think the guys are pretty serious, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Because even on like some of Chris, who's been on some of the podcasts before, writes for Decibel. Chris Dick of teethofdivine.com, right?
Yeah.
He talked to these guys a little bit about the vocal stuff and like, well, where did that come from? You know,
and then did they say like, oh, we don't even get no Immortal or something?
Yeah, they basically tried to like distance themselves completely from it, and it's more of the voice is a reflection of an unseen demonic entity.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. And then like all you heard like Thorns riffs,
Satyricon
riffs,
stuff. Yeah.
It's a really interesting record.
It's layered. It's cool because there's a lot of like different layering.
Really dense.
Things.
Yeah. It's just like you're basically like you're getting this stuff poured on you, and you can kind of hear like the vocals through it.
But both of us have been rocking this out. You especially a few days ago, and then I had it in my car. I listened to it like 3 times.
I just got this.
Last
3 days
weekend.
ago.
Yeah, from Chris, who was visiting us. So.
Yeah, so I've listened to it, I don't know, 10 or 15 times, and it's a pretty sweet record. It's something different for the whole black metal angle, because we've got the Deathspell Omegas and the Watanes and that, and this kind of adds another. I think it's kind of an area where we haven't really heard much in a while. I mean, Immortal's so different than they used to be.
Yeah,
this is almost like a weird mix of if Satyricon and Battles in the North kind of
Had a baby.
together. Yeah, and then Snorri Rook is coming on and like advising.
Yeah, and doing these like sharp industrial kind of riffing stuff, and there's really not enough. There's not enough Thorn ripoff. There's not enough Immortal ripoffs. Yeah,
this is the first Abath vocal ripoff or homage or whatever you want to call it that I've ever heard.
And so you get so many Demu ripoffs and so many Emperor ripoffs. It's kind of refreshing in the black metal world to get some ripoffs of bands that don't get ripped off enough. So
and somebody out there, for God's sake, do an Immortal cover.
Yeah,
I've never heard an Immortal cover of anything.
I just know of people who play guitar who have said that they can't reproduce.
Nobody knows how to even
what he's doing.
Abath. He doesn't like not like you're taking a bath.
Yeah, but
a bath. Yeah, he did like there's on YouTube. There's a pretty hilarious guitar lesson thing, and he kind of wondered why nobody had figured it out, because he doesn't think he's a very good guitar player.
Yeah,
he's just like, I just do it like this, and it's just like. Watch his picking hand. Yeah,
it's pretty nuts. Some of the speed stuff he's doing. So, but Inquisition, definitely a killer record. And I mean, obviously, it had to have made such an impression on us to have kind of crept into this list. But I think it's going to be a record that we're going to listen to way into 2011 and beyond. Yeah, I
mean, it was something kind of different too, because a lot of the time I'm tempted to follow the bands I've been following for 15 years, 20 years at some point, and this kind of actually edged out Hooded Menace and Hail of Bullets, which New Hail of Bullets I want to bring up real quickly, though, is a really good record. I mean, it's the next best thing since we haven't had Bolt Thrower around for a while. And it's the next kind of progression, because Hail of Bullets and Asphyx are kind of like, what's the point? Yeah. They're so similar. And they kind of veered off, I think, on their own
definitely
identity now.
Some of the more Bolt Thrower melodic kind of elements.
There's a lot of melodicism
like
to it, yeah.
Plus it's cool that they're focusing on the Pacific front of the war, which is cool. Because no one ever does a metal record on that. They only do like the European front and stuff, so... But, I guess speaking of veering off, we're going to end part 1 today with a record that kind of snuck up on us in the last couple months. And, Decibel had brought it kind of to our attention, and it ranked pretty high there. And actually, I ordered this before we even got our Decibel issue, but I had... I don't know, like I had kind of poked around and seen like it ranked so high on their thing that I was like, man, so I started reading about this Dawnbringer Nucleus record, and I sort of said, wow, this sounds like something worth just buying without even hearing it, just taking a stab in the dark, which I kind of like to do sometimes. Kind of fun to, discover something new. And lo and behold, this band that we thought was brand new, and they've been around for 15 years or so, making like kind of records like in their house, basically. And the main guy
this one was
Professor Black.
What's his real name?
Chris Black.
Chris Black. Yeah, he used to write for Metal Maniacs.
Metal Maniacs. Yeah, he did some reviews and stuff. But the thing that was always preventing these guys from, I guess, puncturing through into the more of a mainstream sort of audience was the fact that the production was always so kind of self-produced, horrible sounding. And then they got Sanford Parker, who did like the last few Knockmistiums and different things like that.
In the band as well.
Yeah, and so that's awesome, because the song that we're going to play, Like an Earthquake, to sort of close things out, I wrote, it's the best Knockmistium song of 2010.
It's definitely got, especially if you've heard Black Metal Part 2 Addicts, it's definitely got that kind of weird... I don't even know how to really describe it, like a pseudo-industrial-ish kind of vibe.
It's got like a beat to it that works, and it's...
But the thing about Dawnbringer, and this is like over the last, 4 or 5 years now, the whole kind of resurgence of thrash. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of bands, I think, that have done it really well, like, Toxic Holocaust and Municipal Waste, and there's a handful of others. But then there's like Earache, and particularly has... a shit ton of these bands that are just like every couple months, White Wizard, all these bands that are just kind of fulfilling that need. And Dawnbringer is almost going back like, to like early Priest and like 80s and 70s hard rock.
Yeah,
bring that in,
bring that sensibility.
But it's not like an homage. It's just like, okay, here's that riff, and then here's a riff that sounds like it could be on a Dark Throne record, and then but it all kind of comes together seamlessly, really weird.
Sure, and
it's a bizarre record.
And I think it's really cool too that he's able to pull it off with the clean vocals too, because it's kind of like a breath of fresh air to hear something that this is a record I can play like around my students, and I have, and it's cool because like a lot of the kids who are into metal, or even not even just like extreme metal stuff, but like Metallica, and they'll be like, dude, this is rocking. This guy's and it has that sort of old feel to it.
Yeah, he doesn't have a great voice, but he's got a lot of like heart behind it, and he doesn't like try to go beyond what he can do. Sure.
And there's some moments like early in the record where he kind of has some Lemmyisms, so it's a little rough around the edges, but on this, like it's very it feels kind of like an anthem. It's very anthemic.
But the whole record's really like triumphant.
Yeah.
And I mean, Old Wizard's one of the best songs of the year.
That's a sweet song. I picked this one because of the shredding and some of the Gothenburg kind of stuff.
Old Wizard's kind of an anomaly on the record too. But Old Wizard, Take My Hand So I Can Understand.
Yes. But yeah, Dawnbringer, Like an Earthquake. This is a good way to close out part one of our countdown. And this is, I think, the first of a couple releases from Profound Lore, which was definitely one of the record companies of the year in terms of like some of the quality that they were able to put out, like the Ludicra that we mentioned earlier. And we didn't mention that Inquisition was actually on No Colors, which was kind of a
notorious. Graveland was one of the big proponents of the Aryan bullshit black metal stuff.
Yeah.
But apparently, I've been assured that No Colors is no longer following that front, because Aryans don't really have that much money.
Yeah,
disposable income, I don't think, and you're missing out on like South America. They love metal, and I don't think they South like America, racism.
Not terribly Aryan, but
not too white. But yeah, it's going to be reissued here in the States. I forget which label it's going to be on the States. Something small, but
cool.
It should be available soon.
Cool. So enjoy Dawnbringer, Like an Earthquake, and we'll
see you in 2 and 2.
Yeah, we'll see you in a moment.